Chapter 671. Grief. Youngest junior brother, let me tell you this. Our eldest senior brother is in constant isolation. He will only come out on the day of eternal creation, and every single time he comes back, he'll make a huge ruckus. Even if you're dead drunk, you'll still wake up because of him. You'll have to listen to him shouting that he's finally out, and it's a real headache. You can treat him like a turtle. He usually sleeps, and when he wakes up he'll let out a loud yawn, then he'll go back to sleep. This was Hu Zi's description of his eldest senior brother. Our eldest senior brother is our older brother. He is an older brother who will stand in front of us and shield us from danger. These were words once uttered softly by Su Ming's second senior brother as he looked at the foot of the mountain. The scenes that appeared in Su Ming's head caused blood to flow down from his eyes. The color of that blood was crimson red, and it was formed by the maddened roars in his heart, as well as an outburst that was caused by a raging killing intent and extreme pain. Eldest senior brother. Su Ming looked at the man walking out of the vortex on the ground, and his vision seemed to have become indistinct. Eldest senior brother's eyes were lifeless. Not a single hint of light could be detected within them. His eyes were dull, as if they belonged to a dead person. However, the presence bursting forth from his body at that moment was strong enough that he could fight against Jian. This was clearly an attack Di Qian had prepared for Jian, and it was the killing move that would help him determine the ownership of Eastern Wasteland's tower. Su Ming's gaze met with his eldest senior brother's, but the two of them had changed since that time long ago. Due to the grief on Su Ming's face and the apathetic expression on his eldest senior brother's, the meeting of their eyes brought no joy to either of them, like what had happened when they were a family in the 9th summit and their gazes had met. There was only a feeling of unfamiliarity between them, as if they were strangers meeting in a foreign land.
Di Tian.
As long as I live, I will definitely kill all immortals. I will make you suffer utmost pain, and if I cannot achieve this, I will sink into the netherworld forever and have my soul disappear. Su Ming let out a shocking roar towards the sky as he cried tears of blood. Within that roar was a wave of madness and hatred that made all those who heard it feel their hearts tremble in fear. At the instant Su Ming roared, his eldest senior brother lifted his right foot from the ground and, with his still apathetic face, took a step forward and appeared instantly in front of Su Ming. His speed had already surpassed that of warping. At the instant he appeared, Su Ming instinctively lifted his hand, but the familiar presence, the warmth of his eldest senior brother from the past, and the endless scars on his body made Su Ming unable to attack. A loud bang shook the sky and reverberated swiftly through the air. Su Ming coughed up blood and staggered backwards until he was several hundreds of feet away. He had lifted his right hand, but had never attacked. Instead, he chose to guard against his eldest senior brother's punch. This punch was also so familiar it made Su Ming feel as if his heart was being torn apart. The presence of a shaman. As a descendant of 9 Li tribe, his eldest senior brother was exuding the ripples of power that belonged to a shaman. As they spread out, a gigantic statue of the god of shamans appeared. That statue had his arms crossed over his chest, and once it appeared, Su Ming saw that it had the same scars, same tears, and the exact same runic symbols as his eldest senior brother. This statue of the god of shamans was also covered in wounds, but not a hint of weakness due to them could be detected from it. Instead, there was a huge wave of overflowing life force. However, Su Ming could sense that the life force was burning. His eldest senior brother's life was being burned so that this statue could appear. Su Ming lifted his head swiftly. In the midst of his grief, he looked at his eldest senior brother and lifted his trembling right hand. He told himself that his eldest senior brother was no longer around. Only when he attacked could he chase away Di Qian's will from his eldest senior brother's body and let his eldest senior brother have a slim chance of survival. However, even Su Ming himself found that he could not believe in these words. At the instant he lifted his right hand, which was trembling, and formed a seal, a gentle voice suddenly echoed in his ears, and that voice came from his eldest senior brother's lips. Youngest junior brother, how long has it been since we last met? That voice was rather stiff, but it was incredibly gentle. That was, indeed, his eldest senior brother's voice, the one that belonged to him in Su Ming's memories. The appearance of that voice caused Su Ming's lifted right hand to freeze, and he looked towards his eldest senior brother as more tears of blood flowed down from his eyes while his heart clenched in pain. That familiar voice made Su Ming feel as if he had returned to the 9th summit. He knew this was not real. He knew. But there were certain times when even if someone knew what they saw was fake, they would still choose to look and listen, because that was no longer their bodies taking action. Those were actions taken by their hearts driven by familial love. Almost at the instant Su Ming looked towards his eldest senior brother, he lifted his head swiftly, and blood-red light shone in his lifeless eyes. 9 Li Tribe Relic, Forbidden Curse, Blood Swamp. Veins popped on eldest senior brother's skin at that moment, and his body was swiftly torn to pieces before he turned into a sea of blood that quickly disappeared as it rushed forward. His not Di Tian. His my eldest senior brother. Su Ming mumbled. There was still blood trickling out of his mouth, and he was still feeling the sharp pain, which was caused by latest strike just now. If eldest senior brother had executed Di Tian's divine ability, then Su Ming might have been able to deceive himself by saying that the person before him was not his eldest senior brother but Di Tian's clone, but he had cast a shaman divine ability, 9 Li Tribe's art. All of this made Su Ming unable to attack. He could not attack his eldest senior brother, who was like a brother to him. Su Ming laughed brokenly, and during that moment, the sea of blood that had disappeared just now swiftly appeared around him. Youngest junior brother, why don't you tell me where you've been over the past few years? When that sea of blood appeared, eldest senior brother's apathetic voice echoed in the air once again, and it caused Su Ming to be filled with an indescribable sorrow in the midst of his broken laughter. He did not choose to dodge as that wave of sorrow filled his body. Instead, he simply allowed his eldest senior brother to surround him. Then, that sea of blood swiftly gathered on him, and in the blink of an eye, it had Su Ming completely covered. An even more shocking loud bang reverberated in all directions during that instant. Once the sea of blood regained its human form, Su Ming's body was like a kite with a broken string flying in a storm. Blood gushed out from his mouth, as well as other parts of his body. Su Ming's face turned pale. He fell back several thousands of feet before he managed to find his footing, and as he smiled brokenly, he looked towards his eldest senior brother. His injuries had become worse. However, at this moment, his eldest senior brother's words reached him again. Youngest junior brother, with this power, how could you look for master and your second eldest brother? Eldest senior brother took a step forward, and a loud bang exploded before Su Ming. Su Ming coughed up blood and fell back once more. If his body had not been strong enough, he would have collapsed and died a long time ago, but even so, his body was still hurting badly, and the pain would not stop. Su Ming wiped away the blood at the corners of his mouth. In the midst of his grief, his body was no longer the one in pain, it was his soul hurting. He was about to lift his hand again, but right at the moment he was about to counterattack in his sorrow. Do you still remember the time when we worked together and attacked Phantom Deus tribe? His eldest senior brother's voice echoed in the air. Su Ming's hand shook. Do you still remember the shaman soul I gave you before you went to the battlefield? Those words reached Su Ming's ears, and a shocking boom immediately resounded. Su Ming fell back again. His whole body was covered in blood, but no matter how much blood he spilled, it could not hide away the pain in his heart, and neither could it cover the thick sorrow that surrounded him. A layer of silence covered the area. All the immortals were watching the battle with complicated expressions on their faces. They could see Su Ming's abnormal behavior and could tell that the person who walked out of the coffin had an incredibly unique relationship with him. Eldest senior brother, this was what Su Ming had called the person in the coffin, and youngest junior brother was what that person had called Su Ming. These titles only served to prove their guesses correct. Chen Lan Meng stared at Su Ming's eldest senior brother in the sky with a dazed look, then at Su Ming. She bit her bottom lip, and an absent-minded expression appeared on her face. She had only learned of her identity as an immortal moments before the catastrophe of the Eastern Wastelands. This had caused her to sink into a long period of silence, and no one could have possibly understood the confusion and mixed feelings in her heart. When she gradually began to accept her identity, she found that the immortals she saw and the things she heard them say were vastly different from those of the berserkers. The berserkers might also fight among themselves, but they were much less sinister and had way fewer methods they could deploy against their enemies compared to the immortals, just like what was happening right at the moment. A fight to the death between brothers of the same master. Perhaps Di Tian had already predicted this. He might had even wanted to see this. Eldest senior brother. Su Ming lifted his head and let out a loud roar towards the sky. He told himself that his eldest senior brother's voice was numb and apathetic. He told himself once again that as long as he destroyed Di Qian's divine will, his eldest senior brother could return. Su Ming repeated this thought in his mind again and again, taking a swift step forward as he roared. With it, tears of blood were shed, and as he formed a seal with his right hand, the arms of his statue of the god of berserkers immediately appeared behind him and charged towards his eldest senior brother with a bang. This time, his eldest senior brother did not dodge. Strangely enough, he chose to stand in the spot. He did not move, but at the instant the arms of Su Ming's statue closed in on him. Youngest junior brother, kill me. Youngest junior brother, I'm your eldest senior brother. Youngest junior brother, I'm under Di Qian's control. I can only fight against him for a while. Kill me. And in our next life, let us be fellow clan brothers again. There was an anxious tone in eldest senior brother's voice, along with a wave of grief, causing Su Ming to forcefully stop his charging statue of the god of berserkers at that instant. Yet when he stopped, his eldest senior brother opened his eyes, and the apathetic, lifeless look in his eyes, along with the words he just said, made Su Ming understand that everything he had told himself was false. Youngest junior brother, kill me. Eldest senior brother may be saying these words, but he also took a step forward and closed in on Su Ming, ramming his head into him. With a bang that rang in the air, Su Ming staggered backwards, and a cross-shaped shadow appeared on his face. That cross-shaped shadow was the same as the cross-shaped scar on his eldest senior brother's face. Once it appeared on Su Ming's face, it looked as if it had sunk deeply into his flesh, and a burning, rotting sensation swiftly came from it. However, Su Ming was completely unbothered by this pain. He looked at his eldest senior brother and the apathetic, lifeless look in his eyes, before he closed his eyes. After a brief instant, he reopened them, and the grief in his own eyes had been hidden in the depths of his heart. What appeared at the front were complicated feelings, as well as understanding and anguish towards life. Eldest senior brother, I understand now. With pain and grief in his body and soul, Su Ming lifted his right hand and pointed towards the sky. Later stage of the Berserker Soul Realm. Activate. Su Ming's voice almost turned hoarse from his roars as he vented the endless depression in his heart at that moment. Chapter 672. The Statue from the Palace. I wasn't strong enough. If I was strong enough, Di Qian wouldn't have dared to do this. My power still isn't enough for me to be considered a powerful warrior, or else I would be able to break the wall connecting Di Qian and eldest senior brother. All of this is because I'm too weak. I want to become stronger. I want to become endlessly stronger. I want to become a powerful warrior that can dictate its own fate. Su Ming roared in his heart. Red filled his eyes, and his qi burst forth from his body at that instant. This was his roar towards fate, his roar towards Di Qian. The anomaly in the world caused by his berserker soul had yet to disappear. It was still around, and Su Ming's serendipity had yet to end. He could still become stronger, but he needed enough stimulation and incentives. The stimulation he had obtained from his battle with Ji and had not been enough. By devouring the golden-robed Di Qian, that stimulation had reached an incredibly high level. Eldest senior brother's appearance and fate's decision against him had caused Su Ming to understand many things within a moment. There were certain things that were out of a person's control when he lived in this world, just like what happened between eldest senior brother and Su Ming himself. This was, perhaps, a form of life, and they needed to gain control over the power that was needed to break this life themselves. Only by endlessly becoming stronger and making themselves the lords of everything could they make sure that something like this never happened a second time. This was life. In anguish, Su Ming knew that he had gained a deeper understanding towards the word life, but the price for this epiphany was too great, and he would rather have not gained it. As his qi erupted and his power in the middle stage of the Berserker Soul Realm continued rising until the large amount of signs for the later stage in the Berserker Soul Realm showed up, Su Ming saw his eldest senior brother being pushed back by an invisible force. At that moment, Su Ming lifted his right hand slowly and swung it at the sky. I understood how to clear my mind in the 9th summit, and after that, I understood the power of wind. I fused with the wind crystal and became the wind berserker. As Su Ming mumbled and swung his arm, the sky started roaring again. More rainbows appeared, and their numbers were endless. They covered the entire sky until even the distortions up ahead looked as if they were only the wrinkles of the sky. When anyone looked over, they would find that their vision had been blocked off. As loud booms echoed in the air, a humming sound that made it seem as if there was someone roaring begun in the sky. It was as if that person was trying to say something, but due to the distorted sky standing in between his words and the people's ears, no one could understand him. Yet even so, the pressure and the anomalies in the world as Su Ming began his endeavor to reach the later stage of the Berserker Soul Realm already surpassed what was brought out when he reached the initial and middle stages of the Berserker Soul Realm previously. It was bound to happen. The vast presence of Su Ming's venture into the Berserker Soul Realm would be unprecedented. It was bound to happen. All those who watched Su Ming reach the later stage of the Berserker Soul Realm would find this scene to be the most brilliant and beautiful light that they had ever seen up to that point in their lives. I, Su Ming, now bring forth the Berserker's Wind Berserker. Appear. Su Ming's voice spread out, and as the world rumbled, an infinite amount of wind rose swiftly around him. The violent gusts then rose above the 9 heavens. The sky and earth trembled. At the instant this sight caught the world's attention, waves surged and tumbled about the endless Dead Sea far beyond eastern wastelands. It was as if there were an endless amount of raging dragons roaring in the sea, and their roars swept up the seawater to bring up waves that surged into the sky, making it seem as if the entire Dead Sea was boiling and erupting. Within the deepest depths of it was a place that practically no one knew about, and it was a place that was separated from the world by an immeasurable amount of seawater. That place was once a continent many years ago, but now it had turned into a frozen world. There was an entire city frozen solid within the depths of the Dead Sea. Freezing air spread out from it, causing that place of the Dead Sea to be much colder. There was an innumerable amount of buildings and palaces within that frozen city. A tall altar could be seen within the silent city as well. On that altar was a frozen old man, and right before him was a long animal spine. That was Great Yu Imperial City. In the midst of all the silent years, Su Ming seemed to have been the only living person who had coincidentally entered that place. Aside from him, it seemed like no one else had come to bother Great Yu Imperial City's sleep. Yet at that moment, as Su Ming summoned the Wind Berserker from eastern wastelands, a powerful presence suddenly erupted from a lofty palace to the right of the frozen Great Yu Imperial City, right in the depths of the silent Dead Sea. The appearance of that presence broke the silence that had lasted for years there. As it erupted, a loud boom reverberated in Great Yu Imperial City. The lofty palace shattered in an instant and turned into broken pieces of rubble that spread out to reveal a huge statue that was several thousands of feet tall. The statue looked incredibly ordinary, but there was an endless amount of light breezes surrounding its body. That wind grew stronger with each passing moment, until it eventually stirred up the entire Dead Sea and caused a giant whirlpool to appear at the surface of the sea. As the whirlpool spun with loud booming sounds, a shudder shook the statue before it rose from the ground and charged towards the area above. Then, it disappeared into the whirlpool in the Dead Sea. Almost at the instant that happened and Su Ming pointed forward with his right hand the moment he finished speaking, the world rumbled, and a long arc traveling with an indescribable speed that far surpassed Su Ming's own swiftly closed in from the distant sky. The sounds of wind that were stirred up because of it were strong enough to tear through everything, including the sky and the earth. Quite a number of the tens of thousands of immortals collapsed due to the piercing howls of the wind. During that instant, a gigantic statue appeared right above Su Ming. Naturally, this statue was the one that had appeared after the palace was destroyed under the Dead Sea. A power that belonged to wind burst forth from within the statue, stirring up all the wind within the land of berserkers to gather about. The weather changed, the winds and clouds moved, and the shock from this sight caused the entire world to fall silent within a moment. The statue did not move, continuing to float in mid-air. Yet for some unknown reason, all those who saw it felt as if they did not know whether what they were feeling was just a figment of their imagination or not. The sense they got was that while this statue might not have been revived just yet, it still gave off an air as if it was worshipping Su Ming. Right at the instant this feeling appeared within the hearts of all those in the land, their eyes immediately went wide. In the midst of their shock, they saw the statue slowly rising its arms and wrapping a fist in a palm before it knelt down and worshipped Su Ming. This feeling of perfection made it seem as if the statue was supposed to do this right from the start. It was as if the statue had been in this form when it was created. Lightning, I deceived you in the past with a trick and obtained half of the lightning crystal. I fused with that half to let myself become the lightning berserker. Right now, I no longer need the other half of the crystal. I will use the half I've obtained as the guide and have the berserker's lightning berserker appear. Su Ming waved his arm, and an endless amount of lightning erupted from within his body with a bang. Those bolts of lightning swam in all directions and turned into lightning arcs that swept through the sky. In another direction of the frozen Great Yu Imperial City was another hall in a palace. With a bang in the depths of the Dead Sea, an endless amount of lightning shattered the hall, and thunder traveled out, causing the entire Dead Sea to boil and erupt. A large amount of lightning spread out madly within the Dead Sea, causing the ferocious beasts there to instantly let out shrill roars and dodge madly. At the same time as the hall was destroyed, a statue that was surrounded by lightning sparks appeared. As thunder roared, it moved through the entire Dead Sea and shot straight out of the water's surface. The statue turned into a bolt of lightning that could break space itself, allowing it to leave that way. Kai Lei Qian was leading his people in a charge through eastern wastelands, when his expression suddenly changed drastically, and lightning started bursting forth from his body uncontrollably, filling the entire area around him. Those bolts of lightning let out thunderous cracks that sounded like roars, excited cries, and shouts of submission. The sudden change caused Kai Lei Qian to be momentarily stunned before he whipped his head around to look in the direction of the Dead Sea with disbelief on his face. I can sense the lightning berserker deity statue. It was also right at that moment that Su Ming swung his arm and finished calling for the lightning berserker. An endless amount of lightning instantly appeared in the wind. At the instant those bolts of lightning turned the sky into a pool of lightning, shocking roars instantly closed in from afar, and they belonged to a gigantic statue that was exuding an endless amount of lightning. That statue stopped right above Su Ming, directly opposite the wind berserker statue. Then, as if it was looking at Su Ming, it slowly lifted its arms and wrapped a fist in its palm, and like the wind berserker statue, it knelt down with a bang and worshipped Su Ming. This world originally did not have any fire berserkers. The fire berserker was just an incarnation of the third god of berserkers and was what the people called him. I inherited the fire berserker's art when I was young, and since this berserker died with the third, then now, the fire berserker will appear in the world through my hands. Su Ming closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, fire raged within them. Immediately, in another direction of the lightning and wind berserker, a wave of flames appeared out of nowhere in the sky. He Feng has died, but his will still exists in this world. With his will as your soul, the fires of the berserkers as your body, and the berserker's kismet as your consciousness. Fire berserker, appear. Su Ming lifted his right hand and pointed towards the flames that had appeared out of thin air. Those flames immediately exploded with a bang, and at that instant, the entire land of berserkers was set on flames by invisible fire. Right at the same time, it seemed as if the entire land was responding to Su Ming. A figure with wings appeared within the flames Su Ming was pointing towards. The figure was like the wings of the moon, but it resembled He Feng even more so. However, He Feng had already died, and the one that appeared right then was his will, which was remembered by the world after his death. Right then, his will manifested and fused with the world of berserker's kismet, and as it burned, a figure gathered in the air. It was also a statue, but it was burning statue. It appeared as He Feng, and as it opened its eyes and met Su Ming's gaze, the fire berserker statue slowly lifted its arms and wrapped a fist in its palm as a salute before it knelt swiftly on the ground to worship him. The fire berserker, wind berserker, and lightning berserker statues formed an equilateral triangle, and they were all kneeling towards Su Ming, who stood in the center, as if Su Ming was their king, their sovereign, the god of berserkers which they acknowledged. Chapter 673, Later Stage of the Berserker Soul Realm. Later stage of the Berserker Soul Realm. Su Ming was standing in midair, right in the center of the three berserker statues. He looked at the sky, and there was an endless amount of rainbows shining around him, as if they were all worshipping the berserker's king. The distortions in the sky became a backdrop for this scene of Su Ming being surrounded by the statues, resulting in him looking like the core of the world. Su Ming's chi erupted forth with a bang as the three berserker statues knelt down and worshipped him. An invisible wave of air surrounded him, howling, and caused Su Ming's hair to move without wind and his robes to flutter. The presence of his cultivation base also erupted forth at that moment. It continued rising, until it reached the peak of the middle stage of the Berserker Soul Realm in the blink of an eye. He was only half a step away from the later stage, and he felt as if he could reach that stage if he just took one step forward. However, this half a step was not easy to take. Su Ming's chi and cultivation base might have increased exponentially, but they only reached the peak of the middle stage of the Berserker Soul Realm. Su Ming could not take that one step forward to truly become a powerful berserker in the later stage of the Berserker Soul Realm. It was as if there was a membrane lying between these two stages, and he could not break through it. The seal within Su Ming's memories was also mostly broken as his cultivation base exploded forth, bringing with it sharp stabs of intense pain. This pain remained in his head, and as the seal cracked even more, it grew stronger. Yet Su Ming always felt a wave of power that traveled through dimensions on him, preventing the seal in his head from breaking. It was as if that power would absolutely not allow the seal in Su Ming's head to break, and it was increasing its strength in attempts to stabilize completely. It was this power that had become the membrane preventing Su Ming from stepping into the later stage of the Berserker Soul Realm, causing him to be unable to completely reach a full outburst to push through. A freezing glare appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He lifted his right hand and swung at the sky. Immediately, the world rumbled, and the Fire Berserker, Lighting Berserker, and Wind Berserker statues lifted their heads, their movements causing a bang in the air. At the instant they stood up from their kneeling postures, they fused together right above Su Ming's head. With the power that came from the fusion and the power of the world that was surging towards him from all directions, Su Ming charged once more towards the later stage of the Berserker Soul Realm. That charge turned into a loud bang that surged into the sky in his body and shook Su Ming's heart and soul, but he was still slightly lacking and could not break that membrane. Wind, rain, thunder, lightning. These are 4 of the 8 runic symbols in Hidden Dragon Sect. I fused lightning and thunder into my lightning berserker art, and wind also has its own berserker art, only rain remains. Then, with my will, I will now gather all the rain under the sky to fuse it into my rain runic symbol and merge it into my statue of the god of berserkers. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. When he lifted his hands and formed a seal, he spread out his arms, and a large amount of rain immediately appeared out of nowhere as thunder roared and lightning filled the sky. Together, they swept through the land. This area was not the only place that was visited by rain. The entire eastern wastelands, Dead Sea, and the land of berserkers, were covered by rain during that instant. It poured down from the sky, and as it continued without stop, an endless amount of raindrops gathered together to form a gigantic runic symbol before Su Ming. That symbol was shining with a brilliant light, and it charged towards the place where the 3 berserker statues had fused together before it instantly merged with them. Once that happened, the power that erupted from Su Ming's body became even stronger, but he did not immediately attempt charging into the later stage. Instead, with brightly shining eyes, he stared at the sky as if his gaze could penetrate space itself, pierce through Yin-Death region, and see the world outside, straight at the source that was trying to stabilize his seal. I understood the curse from Madame G's ring and the Candle Dragon's eyes, and I mastered it when the reincarnations in the undying and imperishable world could not wipe away my soul. It was completed, because of Ugly Little Thing's Pa and the grass not doll in his hand. Today, I will fuse the curse in my statue of the god of berserkers and make the person who is trying to seal my memories have a taste of my curse. At the instant the dark light appeared in Su Ming's eyes, he lifted his left hand, and a wave of black fog instantly seeped out of his fingers. It swiftly turned into a doll that was surrounded by fog. That doll was an illusion. It looked as if it was made from grass, and its features could not be seen clearly, but there was an incredibly strange presence spreading out from it. The fog doll seemed to possess a soul. It let out a piercing roar towards the sky, then charged to the 3 berserker statues that had fused together with the rain runic symbol above Su Ming's head. The figures overlapped and merged together. At that instant, Su Ming's chi and cultivation base reached their pinnacle. This was the fusion of power from the Fire Berserker, Lightning Berserker, Wind Berserker, the Rain runic symbol, and the curse. As they gradually overlapped and fused together as one, a large amount of the rainbows in the sky collapsed and turned into an endless amount of crystalline light that charged toward Su Ming, then fused into the overlapped figure of the three berserker statues, the curse, and the rain runic symbol. A loud bang that turned into a humming sound replaced all manner of sound in the world, causing the immortals in the world to feel their minds roaring, and at the instant their minds turned blank because of the violent tremors in their heads. The three berserkers became one. The curse fused together with the rain runic symbol, and joined completely the three berserker statues. When there was no longer any distinction between them, a huge body appeared in the world. This was just a torso, but at the moment it appeared, the pressure that spread out from within it was powerful enough to shake the sky and earth. Su Ming swung his arm, and the torso immediately crumbled with a bang, then turned into pieces that charged towards Su Ming. Once they fused into his body, Su Ming lifted his head and let out a long howl that made the world tremble. His howl reverberated through the 9 heavens, and his cultivation base erupted at that moment, increasing madly within the middle stage of the Berserker Soul Realm before breaking through and allowing Su Ming to step into the cultivation stage that would only appear in his dreams when he was still in Dark Mountain. The later stage of the Berserker Soul Realm. The number of powerful berserkers in the later stage of the Berserker Soul Realm might be a little higher than those who had attained great completion in the entire world of berserkers, but no matter in which region they resided, they could be said to be the most powerful warriors there, and even those who had attained great completion in the Berserker Soul Realm would go out of their way to recruit them to their side. All those who reached this stage were no longer weaklings. Unless they ran into people like Su Ming, who had managed to turn his whole body into that of a true berserker and whose power could not be measured with any of the previous conventions because his condition had never appeared before, then they were people who could look down upon the world. Almost at the instant Su Ming's level of cultivation reached the later stage of the Berserker Soul Realm, the power which had come from another dimension and was holding down the seal in his head was faced with a direct resistance. Once Su Ming's cultivation base erupted, his power caused a large part of the seal to break. As Su Ming fought back against that power, a bang went off in his head, and he immediately felt the power holding him down growing stronger, but even if it did so, it was not as pure as it was previously. It seemed that if more power was sent down, it would become increasingly murkier. In fact, when Su Ming observed it with his power once he arrived at the later stage of the Berserker Soul Realm, he found a trace of an invisible path that was used by this person to send his power into him. That path seemed to have been carved into his soul and had turned into an indirect picture. This picture was formed after 6 points were connected together, and that seal was contained within what they had drawn. This was the first time Su Ming saw the passage formed by those 6 points in his head. He let out a cold harumph and did not bother about the power of suppression that descended on him. Instead, he traveled up against the flow of the path, and his divine sense instantly fused into the picture formed by the 6 connected points. He wanted to travel up the path this person used to descend on him and see just who was the person who was suppressing him through another dimension. Almost at the instant Su Ming's divine sense touched the 6 connected points, a loud bang rang in his head, and his consciousness instantly became clouded. He could vaguely see the endless yin-death fog surging about around him, and he felt like he was walking on a thin thread to charge towards the void. He had no idea how much time had passed. When the area around him became clear, he saw the brilliant galaxy once again, as well as the vortex that was yin-death region below him. He also saw 9 gigantic planets surrounding that vortex. He could also see a thin thread stretching out from that galaxy into the vortex, and his consciousness had come out of the vortex through that thread. Su Ming's consciousness swiftly traveled up that thread, but perhaps it would be more accurate to call it a shred of his will instead of his consciousness. He wanted to see with his own eyes Di Qian's will, which he believed was suppressing him from the real body. The sensation of a shred of will wandering about might feel as if it had only gone on for an instant, but could also feel as if it had lasted for years. Su Ming had no idea how much time had passed. His will gradually grew weaker, and the reason behind it almost disappearing was because his power was still not enough to support his will spreading out like this. Right at the instant it was about to disperse, Su Ming saw an innumerable amount of floating continents in the galaxy up ahead. There was a great amount of altars on those continents. He had seen this place before. He saw it when Sima Xin died. Su Ming's will dispersed, but right at the instant he was about to disappear, he saw himself following that thread and entering into the depths of the endless continents in the galaxy. It also meant that perhaps Di Qian's real self had cast an art from this direction and caused Su Ming to be unable to break the seal. Su Ming's eyes flew open. He stood in the sky, and there was an innumerable amount of gazes around him gathered on his person. He might have seemed to have gone on a long journey with his will, but in reality, it had only lasted for an instant. At that moment, as Su Ming's cultivation base erupted and he entered the later stage of the Berserker Soul Realm, the world roared. In the midst of the endless distortions, a large area of the sky immediately tore apart, and a gigantic body descended with a bang. This body had no limbs, no head, it was only a torso. However, at the instant it descended, the arms of Su Ming's statue of the god of berserkers instantly manifested and fused with the torso at the empty spots where they fit. Then, what appeared before the people was a gigantic statue of the god of berserkers that had no head and legs. A savage presence spread out from the statue, and there was no attempt to hold back that presence at all. The later stage of the Berserker Soul Realm. Su Ming took a step forward and stopped before the statue. He averted his gaze from the sky and looked towards his eldest senior brother in the distance. His apathetic eldest senior brother also turned his gaze towards Su Ming at that moment and looked at him with thousands of feet separating them. After a short period of silence, as the pressure around Su Ming dissipated once his level of cultivation rose, a low growl that sounded as if it came from a wild beast swiftly fell out from eldest senior brother's lips. Chapter 674. This Battle. This battle could not be avoided. This battle must be fought. This battle was known as a shaman's sacrifice. As Su Ming's eldest senior brother roared, his expression turned incredibly ferocious. He lifted his left hand and seized the air. Immediately, a gigantic war drum was dragged out from the space in front of him. That war drum was 100-something feet tall and was entirely purplish red. It looked as if it had been dyed in an immeasurable amount of fresh blood over the ages. There was also a large amount of vengeful souls surrounding it, and as it appeared, those vengeful souls immediately let out piercing roars. Eldest senior brother stood apathetically by the drum, and with the hook acting as his right hand, he struck it. A drum's beat that shook hearts and made the world tremble instantly spread out in all directions. Layers of ripples reverberated in the sky. That drum was no ordinary drum. It was 9 Li Shaman Tribe's 9 Li war drum. Once it was struck, it would terrify enemies and cause the person who had struck it to find their blood boiling. As it was stimulated, their cultivation base would also burst forth as if it had been set on fire. The single beat of the drum caused eldest senior brother's face to instantly flush red. His eyes were no longer lifeless, but were shining with a glow that made him look like a wild beast that possessed no intelligence. At the instant he opened his mouth and roared, he charged towards Su Ming. There was an endless amount of vengeful souls swirling about in the area behind him. These ghosts came from that 9 Li drum, and as its sound reverberated in the air, they became so agitated that they would only rest after devouring enough flesh and blood to calm their emotions. Eldest senior brother rushed over with a shocking momentum. Su Ming stood in his place and silently lifted his right hand to point forward. Immediately, the gigantic statue of the god of berserkers behind him phased through his body and appeared right before him. The left hand, which represented lightning and thunder, was swiftly lifted up, and the statue hurled its left fist forward. At the same time, the right arm that represented destiny was lifted and swept toward the eldest senior brother's side. Due to being attached to a body, not only did the two arms become much more agile, they also became a lot more stronger than before. A boom echoed in the air, and Su Ming closed his eyes behind the statue of the god of berserkers. He formed a seal with his right hand before throwing a punch forward. His statue was in the way, between his punch and eldest senior brother, but his attack still exploded at the spot where his statue clashed with eldest senior brother's divine ability. Su Ming's statue swayed and fell back several hundreds of feet before phasing through Su Ming's body to appear behind him. Eldest senior brother staggered backwards until he arrived beside the war drum. Crimson gradually appeared in his eyes. They might still be dull and lifeless, but that crimson shade in his eyes could cover all of them, and almost at the instant that crimson started flashing, eldest senior brother struck the war drum with the hook acting as his right hand once more. This time, 3 beats rang out. The sounds from the drum rumbled in the air, and even if Su Ming was in the later stage of the Berserker Soul Reel, he still felt his heart tremble. The statue of the god of berserkers behind him even began showing signs of distorting. At the same time, right after those 3 beats of the drum rang through the air, eldest senior brother opened his mouth and let out a shocking roar. As he did so, an endless amount of cracks immediately appeared on his body. Black blood spread out from them and turned into magenta fog. Once it surrounded him entirely, a powerful presence erupted from within that fog with a bang. This presence was the pure presence belonging to a shaman, and along with it was the strangeness and the ancient air of the shamans. As that presence erupted, a hoarse voice spread out from the fog. I, the descendant of 9 Li, will now transform into the Shaman Lord. As his voice echoed in the air, the fog was swiftly absorbed by his body. When there was no longer any of it remaining, the eldest senior brother that appeared before Su Ming was distinctly different from before. Even though he still looked as before, but complex runic symbols had appeared at the center of his brows, his arms, his legs, and his chest. These runic symbols did not seem like they belonged to the immortals, but looked more like words that could be found among the berserkers, yet no berserker would be able to recognize them. These were the shaman's seals for their spells. Youngest junior brother. I struck the war drum 3 times previously so that my blood would boil. As my blood was stimulated, I could turn into the Shaman Lord, but I couldn't maintain this form for long in the past, and I wouldn't have been able to cast the more powerful legacy spells. Today, with Lord Di Qian's help, I can do it. This feeling of obtaining control over power is great, very great. Eldest senior brother's expression was still as apathetic as ever. He spoke slowly, and his voice reverberated in all directions. Since fate arranged for us to fight, then I hope that you will not disappoint me in this battle. As eldest senior brother spoke, he lifted his left hand and knelt down swiftly, but he was not kneeling towards Su Ming. He was kneeling towards the sky. I am the descendant of 9 Li and the Lord of Shamans. Youngest junior brother, let's see how much shamanic power you will be able to make me bring forth. With the first shamanic spell, Song of Heavenly Worship, I ask the shaman vessel of the heavens to destroy this person who dares go against us shamans. Eldest senior brother bowed towards the sky. With it, the distortions above instantly stopped moving, and threads of purple fog seeped out of the air before they gathered together into a purple skull in the sky. That skull floated in midair and started spreading out a similar presence as all the berserkers' supreme and priceless treasures in all continents that existed to destroy the immortals. This was clearly 9 Li Shaman tribe's supreme treasure, the god of Shaman's skull. At the instant this treasure appeared, it looked as if it had been revived, and dark light instantly appeared within its eye sockets. As it swept its gaze through the land, its eyes landed on Su Ming. A chilling presence instantly filled Su Ming's heart. That skull's gaze immediately made a sense of danger rise within him. At the same time, his eldest senior brother lifted his left hand and pointed forward, and the skull let out a buzz and charged towards Su Ming. As it moved forward, its powerful presence erupted, and an illusion also manifested above it. That illusion was of a hand, and by the looks of it, it wanted to crush Su Ming within its grip. Di Qian, what a clever move. So this child is the direct descendant of 9 Li tribe? But by the looks of it, he shouldn't be the real direct descendant. He should lean more towards Xinggan's line. Yet even so, just by using his blood as a lead, he could still summon the supreme treasure that belongs to 9 Li Shaman tribe. Di Qian, oh Di Qian, by controlling this child, I can see that you're aiming for many things. Jian's eyes sparkled as he looked at Su Ming's eldest senior brother, and he looked as if he had understood something. This land is indeed mysterious. Not only did a terrifying existence like Xianxia appear, it also has a powerful person like 9 Li's Shaman Lord. But it's also precisely because of this that the berserkers were divided and the shamans appeared. That was also why Xianxia could not use many of the countermeasures he had left behind. 9 Li's Shaman Lord was born at the wrong time. His strength could compare to the first god of berserkers, and he even created the shamans on his own. Then, he imitated Xianxia and created several treasures to protect his race. These treasures can only be summoned by the direct descendants, and this alone makes him inferior to Xianxia. 9 Li's Shaman Lord also has 3 clones that possess divine thoughts and intelligence. Each of them could be considered as direct descendant, and 9 Li's Shaman Lords could appear from the descendants of those clones. As Ji-an was busy musing, Su-ming looked at his eldest senior brother and nodded his head in silence. Almost at the instant his eldest senior brother executed the first shaman spell as a descendant of 9 Li and that purplish-black skull appeared due to his song of heavenly worship, Su-ming sucked in a deep breath. He formed a seal with his right hand, and his statue of the god of berserkers also lifted its right arm behind him, forming a seal. Its left arm also moved. God of berserkers alteration towards the stars, sun, and moon. First alteration. Disaster of the stars. Su-ming's hands touched slightly above his head before they parted swiftly, and he swung his arms at the sky. With it, the distorted sky looked as if it had been torn apart by a pair of invisible hands, and an illusion appeared in the air. It was a piece of sky which had an endless amount of stars shining there, and the place was bright with starlight. At that moment, the stars moved about, and as they shone, they formed rays that grouped together into one to form a shooting star that charged towards the hand that had manifested from the skull. This battle was a fight between Su-ming and his eldest senior brother, but it was also a battle between the god of berserkers and the shaman lord. Su-ming was executing the god of berserkers' arts, and his eldest senior brother was casting the spells that he had inherited as a blood descendant of 9 Li's shaman lord. As these two clashed against each other, they seemed to have returned to ancient times, when the second god of berserkers and 9 Li's shaman lord had fought as if it was their fate to do so. Loud rumbling sounds surged into the sky at that instant, and the entire sky filled with stars crumbled, turning into an endless amount of shards. This was Su-ming's divine ability shattering. The hand formed by that skull also fell back under that roar, with all its fingers crushed. Yet when it fell back, that skull let out cracking sounds and more illusions spread out, allowing the hand to instantly recover. At the instant that happened, the hand stopped falling backwards and charged forward to see Su-ming once again. Disaster of the stars. Su-ming stayed in his spot and did not dodge. He instead formed a seal and pointed towards the crumbling starry sky and shouted those 4 words. In an instant, the broken starlight that still existed within the shattered and fragmented starry sky shone once again, and as they charged forward with their crumbling forms while the sky was still being swept away, the starlight shone down with a sense of incompleteness. The rays of starlight started intersecting with each other as if they had gained corporeal form and turned into waves of murderous aura. This murderous aura came from the sky, the starlight, and the broken universe. At the same time the ground was illuminated, the starlight that filled the sky turned into arrows that rushed towards the hand that had gathered once again above the skull. An even stronger bang reverberated in the air. Su-ming staggered backwards and coughed up a mouthful of blood. As a dispirited expression appeared on his face, his fighting spirit started boiling uncontrollably in his body. This fighting spirit did not come from his will, but was born from the world as a berserker and a shaman fought. His eldest senior brother fell back and also coughed up a mouthful of blood, but that blood was black. As he was forced backwards, he lifted his head swiftly. The second shamanic spell of 9 Li's descendants, Earth's Burial. I ask the shaman treasure of the ground to destroy this person who dares go against us shamans. The third shamanic spell of 9 Li's descendants, Cauldron Transmutation. The berserkers may have a cauldron as their priceless treasure, but we shamans also have a cauldron, and it is the treasure that we shamans use to hold down our kismet. As the blood descendant of 9 Li's shaman lord, I now ask the shaman cauldron to appear. Eldest senior brother lifted his head and pushed his left hand towards the ground. Chapter 675, Shaman's Sacrifice. As eldest senior brother's voice traveled throughout the region, the ground started shaking non-stop, and the entire eastern wastelands looked as if it was tumbling about. The entire Dead Sea also trembled because of it, as if there was something that had been buried under the land of berserkers and under the Dead Sea. And at that moment, those things were being summoned into the world. 3 breaths. Only 3 breaths. Then, a loud boom that surged into the sky immediately shot up from under the ground. Right before everyone's eyes, the land squirmed and was continuously torn apart before a gigantic mountain shot out of the earth. That mountain was clearly not buried here but had gathered together from the land of berserkers due to eldest senior brother's call. Once it broke out and appeared, what revealed itself before everyone's eyes was a mountain that was tens of thousands of feet tall and standing erect on the ground, causing the pupils of all those who saw it to shrink. Right when Su Ming shifted his gaze to the mountain as it shot out of earth, cracks appeared on it and booming sounds reverberated in the air. The mound of earth crumbled swiftly and turned into an endless amount of pieces that tumbled backwards. At that moment, a green armor appeared within it. That armor had been clearly buried within that mountain, and when eldest senior brother summoned it, it was finally brought into the world. The armor shone with a piercing blue light and flew up from the crumbling mountain, appearing on eldest senior brother's body within an instant before turning into a blue vortex. As he stood inside it, he equipped the armor and stood there, stirring up the aura existing in all directions, just like a supreme king. 9 Li's Shaman Lord. He lifted his right arm, and a circular hole that was the size of a palm appeared above the right hook. That hole was pitch black, and it looked as if it could swallow all light from the area, causing the space around its edges to look as if it was continuously shattering and disappearing. It was a terrifying sight to behold. The black hole was lifted up by the right hook on eldest senior brother's arm, and he turned his gaze towards Su Ming. This is the shaman's cauldron. Su Ming stared at the hole, then closed his eyes slowly. At the instant his eldest senior brother took a step forward and charged towards him like a blue shooting star, Su Ming's eyes flew open. He lifted his right hand, then bent his body slightly to make himself look like a crescent moon. At the instant he formed that shape, he whispered softly, "God of Berserker's alteration towards the stars, sun, and moon. Second alteration, shift in the moon." When the shattered starry sky turned dimmer due to his words, a crescent moon appeared in the night view above. A powerful dark light shone from Su Ming's body, and he turned into a crescent moon whose light scattered through the area. Wherever it went, a biting, desolate air would fill the place. Almost at the same time Su Ming executed this divine ability, an illusion of a moon appeared on his eldest senior brother's body, who was still closing in on him in the form of a blue shooting star. That illusion enveloped his body, making him look incredibly bizarre. Moon slaughter. Right at the instant his eldest senior brother was about to arrive, Su Ming opened his mouth swiftly and shouted. The moon in the sky cracked right from the center, and the moon on Su Ming's body also cracked, but it did not result in any harm to him. The illusion on him had just dissipated. However, an incredible amount of power erupted forth from the cracks that appeared in the moon on his eldest senior brother's body, making it seem as if it wanted to rip apart all that existed. Destiny's reincarnations created my right arm. Su Ming lifted his right hand and pointed forward. The right arm of his statue of the god of berserkers immediately turned into a young man with purple hair, and the 2 mountains behind him closed in on his eldest senior brother. The lightning-enchanted vessel became the divine power in my left arm. Su Ming swept his left arm sideways, and his statue's left arm instantly turned into a bolt of crimson lightning that rushed towards his eldest senior brother. The 3 berserker statues, the curse, and the rain runic symbol became the source that formed my torso. Su Ming's words were still echoing in the sky. His statue's torso immediately turned into the 3 berserker statues and surrounded his eldest senior brother. At the same time, black rainwater poured down from the sky, bringing with it powerful curses. And the final alteration for the god of berserkers' alteration towards the sun, moon, and stars. Sun's sacrifice. Once Su Ming said these words, a piercing golden light instantly erupted from his body. As it spread out madly through the area, his body looked as if it had turned into a golden sun. That sun was radiated a powerful light and heat, causing the entire world to be swiftly illuminated by its brightness. Within that light, Su Ming fused together with that sun, and with the heart of a martyr, he executed the strongest style within the alterations towards the sun, moon, and stars. The entire world was replaced by the sun's light, causing no outsider to be able to see what was going on inside, but the continuous booms and tremors on the ground as well as the endless waves that were spreading in all directions were enough to prove just how powerful and shocking the clash was this time. As booming sounds rang into the air, eldest senior brother fell back and black blood gushed out of his mouth. The blue armor on his body disappeared, and the shaman cauldron, too, vanished. His body fell to the ground with a bang, right beside his war drum that he lost, but he did not lose to Su Ming. He had instead lost to time, the time which allowed him to burn his blood. In the end, he could not make the span of time which he could become Shaman Lord last long enough. The light in the sky disappeared, and Su Ming walked out from within. He coughed up a mouthful of blood, and with a pale face, he looked at his eldest senior brother lying on the ground. If it was not because his eldest senior brother was unable to continue, then the victor for the battle just now would have still been undecided. Youngest junior brother, it is done. Eldest senior brother struggled to stand up and lifted his head to look at Su Ming. I have a final style. This style is the limit of my blood. It is my fate, and also my return. There was something unusual within eldest senior brother's words, and when Su Ming heard it, the grief that had originally been hidden away appeared once again. He nodded at him. Just like how he had understood what was going on previously, he now understood that his eldest senior brother's will was not something that Di Qian could control completely. His will still existed, and it wanted to go through the shaman's sacrifice. If he did not, then he would not live. This was a form of life. I have the blood of 9 Li flowing through my veins. All the shamans think I am a direct descendant, but I know that I am not. I am the scion of the 3 clones that belonged to 9 Li's shaman lord, Xinggan. Xinggan's descendants have always been headless. Eldest senior brother stood up and sliced through his neck with the hook on his right hand. With it, his head flew up, but even as blood gushed into the air, his body remained standing on the ground. He showed no signs of falling down. At that moment, a human face emerged on his chest. That face belonged to eldest senior brother, and the head that flew up crumbled in midair, turning into an illusion wearing a crown and an emperor's robe. His face was filled with disbelief. As a descendant of Xinggan, I will now forget my original name. From now onwards, Xinggan. Acts of execution, return. A bang rang out of eldest senior brother's body, and the world went mad. Then, in eldest senior brother's lifted left hand, a gigantic bronze battle axe immediately manifested.